If you're a flight simulator enthusiast like me, you want it to run in 8.1 so you can do this. So we're going to go through the steps for installation and configuration to ensure it works. So it took a lot of research and testing to finally come up with one that worked all the time. But here's, first of all, you're going to need is a Service Pack 1 after you have, of course, your regular installation. And you can download it in several languages. Now, if you have the acceleration expansion pack, you're not going to need Service Pack 2 because you're not supposed to install it. But if you don't have the acceleration pack, you can download the Service Pack 2 at this link. It's in our description for the video how to get to it. So the first thing we did is we installed Flight Simulator X. Now I'm going to skip through all the stuff about configuring the directories it goes in and all that stuff. You know how to do all that stuff and everything. All the other different options here. We're just going to get right to it. I do want to mention that during the install you're going to see screens like this that are coming up that talk about what's available in it. And it's worth noting that this one is one of the last technical ones. If you have Microsoft Flight, the new version, it doesn't have all the technical. It's just a flying game versus a flight simulator like this truly is. So after you go through the activation processes, again, just putting your serial numbers in, you'll come up to here. And here we have 3 different levels. You can choose any level. I chose pilot. I'm not really a pilot, but I want all the detail. So choose your level so you can get started. And the first time it launches, when you do this, it's going to launch into a low resolution version. And you're going to have to go in later and configure that. We're going to leave the configuration specific to the end because it has something to do with how we make sure it runs correctly without crashing. Now it came up with this weird resolution because it doesn't match my system resolution on my monitor. But that just did that. We got out of that, reconfigured and everything. It ran seemingly okay. But it was time to install the patch. So I have the patch here. And I'm going to go ahead and run the patch for Service Pack 1. Okay, so it comes up and says, oh, you want to do this, there's an agreement and all that, so you can do that. So, of course, you have to read all that, and hit accept. And it only takes a little bit of time, but it goes in there and does the configuration, replaces all the files it needs to. Again, skipping to the end, it says it's successfully completed. It should have no errors here, everything should be fine. So we're going to go ahead and click on close here. So you would think you want to install Service Pack 2, but what you don't test don't work. So I thought I'd test Service Pack 1 to see about its compatibility with Windows 8 first. So here we are flying full screen mode now because I changed the resolution settings and all that. And you can see that in the settings now there's it wasn't there before, but there's now 32-bit in here. Okay, so it was 16-bit before. So there's better resolution available after the installation of this. But then again, we're still not into DirectX yet. We still haven't got to the acceleration pack or to the or Service Pack 2. So we're just going to test a few things here, and everything seems to be going fine. It doesn't seem to have any crashes. However, when I ran this and I went into certain airplanes and certain scenery, it crashed. For example, when I used this particular aircraft, maybe because it's big and complex, it actually crashed more often. I would use Nevada, and it would crash almost every time. Actually, even the small planes crashed then, out in the desert in Nevada and everything. Didn't know why. Tested different settings for trilinear, linear, anti-aliasing, all that. But for the most part, everything worked fine. As you can see here, I've got multiple windows I'm opening up and everything. Everything seems to be working correctly. Really a great experience. So again, choosing whichever particular aircraft I want to use and everything, I went through a series of tests, and for the most part, they flew perfectly fine. Everything seems to be flying well, responsive. I'm using an Xbox 360 controller here. But then, after switching to several different aircraft, and sometimes going in and out of menus and sometimes not, it wasn't any real rhyme or reason. But all of a sudden, I would get this. The flight simulator has stopped working, dreaded error message, closed program, and we'd have to quit the program. So what to do? Well, you can either do one of two things. If you have Service Pack 2 and you don't have the acceleration expansion pack, don't install 2. But if you have the acceleration pack, do not install 2. The next step is, even on Microsoft's website, it says do not install that. So we're going to go ahead and install the acceleration pack here. Now it's a very long install, just like a lot of the files for Flight Simulator and everything, so I've cut past all that stuff. But the hope here is either the expansion pack, the acceleration pack, or the regular Service Pack 2 is going to fix the problems. So after this is finished, I'm going to go in for another round of testing. So in order to do that, I'm just going to go ahead and back to the start screen and launch the icon that I had set up earlier. Now I'm not going to go through the entire expansion pack installation. There's another serial number for that. You need to do all that kind of stuff. So after it launches and comes up, you're going to have to run through that process. Now the hope here is after the expansion pack finishes, that either it or the Service Pack 2 fixes all the problems and it runs perfectly fine in Windows 8.1. That way you'll know if whatever configuration you currently have, whether or not you have to either back up an installation or reinstall to have it work correctly. So after all that, it comes up here, and of course here's the regular starting screen. Now I'll skip through all the new features it shows you and all that stuff, but basically you go in and you select your aircraft, set up your resolution and all that, and hopefully you'll be able to fly your aircraft and get started. Now unlike Flight Simulator 2004, where some had some preview problems with Windows 8.0, it was actually also fixed in 8.1, but here you can see your preview of your aircraft, everything that you need to see before you start your flight. Now, of course, here inside, and we go to the settings, you need to set up your system. If you look here, you can select like I selected ultra high, and here's all the settings. It automatically sets to it. Recognize my card. And you would do this for your card as well. Select whichever one you want, probably the highest resolution. Because remember, this was a 2006 game, so most video cards nowadays are much more capable and should be able to run it fine. That being said, I chose the ultra high, and I had several crashes during the course of the program. After it ran, it was no real rhyme or reason. I tested with different aircraft, different scenery, and it did seem to be, confined to a certain ones, but there was no real rules. So that, as you can see, it's running great and everything. I can select different views and all that. Everything appears to be working perfectly. But sooner or later, no matter what aircraft it was, and after testing quite a bit, sooner or later it would just break, and then you'd get this kind of error. So the real question became, what do we do about it? How do we get that to stop? So went and did some more testing and some more configurations and everything, and did some to where we could see if the program would be stable. So I won't bore you with all the tests and everything, but literally tested 10 to 15 planes and everything, different scenarios, and eventually get a crash and everything. But then decided, how can we really test this? So we went into configuration screen here, and we decided to go in here and change some of the settings piece by piece, one by one. So the first thing we did was we went in here and changed the display settings, okay? And if you can see here, the top setting says custom, and that's exactly what we ended up with. And it's not that custom, actually, because when we went in here and tested the different types of settings and everything for all different things, eventually we would crash. We turned on DirectX off and on, tried everything possible to get it to work. Nothing worked. And if we did the advanced settings, just went with the defaults for there's low, medium, high, anyways, with the ultra high settings and everything, that didn't work. I didn't change any of the tabs for any of the other types of configurations, just the graphics tab. So eventually, after trying ultra high, if you can see here, the target frame rate is only set to 20. And that turned out to be significant, because after testing it at different levels, lowering it, put it at 60, did a whole bunch of things, I finally decided just to go to unlimited. Guess what? It turned out to be the key. Haven't had a crash since. Now, to demonstrate its compatibility with Windows 8, I decided to do a split screen. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, Windows 8 has the ability to run two different programs in split sides of the window, including the desktop on one side and the regular Windows 8 app on the other. So we go in here, we launch the Bing Finance app and everything, come over here, let that run, come over back to the desktop, and sure enough, there's Flight Simulator X. So I can sit there and change my daytime settings to nighttime to daytime, or whatever other settings I want. No crashes, which I got sometimes before. There's Flight Simulator X. I can go in here and change, of course, my cockpit view, and I happen to like spot plane a lot because I am not a pilot. I'm just an enthusiast. So I go over here and change this to the whatever window I want. And I can go ahead and start playing my game. You can see it now. Those artifacts you see there are typical whether or not you're in a windowed mode. You get some of those in close-ups on the ground. But then you can see here once we start up and everything runs perfectly fine. I can sit there and taxi and fly and everything else. The aircraft performs normally. Let me grab my joystick or my controller, and we get to do a takeoff. And then you can switch between aircraft. This is just like a regular window desktop mode. You can sit there and decide to choose a different aircraft, a different location. All those settings are available to you. None crashed, which was not the case earlier. It crashed half the time. It crashed because of the access in the menus and everything. Now this is the windowed mode, so I decided to test that in full screen mode. And here we are now in full screen mode, same exact area, starting with the P-51 again. Now, so we can sit there and fly different aircraft again. We're going to switch over, and now we're with a jet. We can do that one for a while as well. And zoom in, zoom out. Nothing caused it to crash. You see the vapor trails. We'll switch again to another aircraft, and there's the Airbus again. Everything working perfectly. We'll switch back here to. We're going to go to the F-18. All the control surfaces rendered properly. Everything's just perfectly fine. And then go back to the sports plane again. It's what you would expect in a good flight simulator program. Perfection. Now, what's interesting is that we went ahead and I'm changing back to the jet for a second so I can get to the coast a little faster. But we're going to test one more thing. As we get closer to the coast, I'm going to switch here to the one of the seaplanes. So we'll skip to the coast here and then change over to the seaplane. And the purpose of this is to want to see some of the nice features that the DirectX is as far as texturing goes. You can already see the water down here and everything, so let me adjust my trim here a little bit and we'll head in for a landing. So here we are in a close-up for a landing, and you'll see here the shadow of the aircraft was normal, but then you also see the reflection of the actual aircraft in the body, in the water. And as we approach this boat here, you'll see the shadow first, and then you'll see the reflection of the aircraft, even colors coming in here. We'll bounce up there, see some water effects. We'll do it again here, and there it is there. So anyway, you'll see how it moves very nicely as the aircraft approaches the water. So we'll go ahead and land, and then we'll do a real quick takeoff here. So we're going to accelerate here in a second, and there we are, starting up a little more water. The reflection moves, and there we go. So if you're like me, you're probably pretty happy that FXX seems to work perfectly well in Windows 8. It gives us a few more years at least. You can always switch over to one of the other flight simulators, but if you want to have nice effects and everything, good graphics, and a very detailed system environment to where you can be anywhere from a novice to a pilot, it looks like that Flight Simulator X, you have nothing to fear from Windows 8, because it can run and run well. So pass the word around, Flight Simulator enthusiasts. 8.1 is nothing to fear, at least not for Flight Simulator FX. I have a whole bunch of other videos on other games, including Max Payne and a few others, and 8.1 seems to be the trick. So good luck to you, and I hope you enjoy your Flight Simulator flying days. And don't forget to subscribe to Old Guy Geek. We have over 100 Windows 8 and Windows Phone 8 videos, and we're publishing more all the time.